Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Motor Trade Radio podcast, brought to you in association with eBay Motors Group. It is Saturday the 24th of July and you're joined by myself, Philip Nothard.
And me, Curtis Hutchinson. This is episode 38, season 7 of Motor Trade Radio, bringing you all the chatter that matters. And once again, we've gathered together this week's big car retailing stories across the franchised and independent sectors for you to enjoy all in one place, on demand, on your podcast feed.
Wow, it's warm, isn't it, Curtis? Everybody's getting a bit of a heat wave at the minute and moaning about it. But I think it's... I think I saw something on social media. Just remember, we've got 16 weeks until the snow might hit, so let's enjoy it whilst we can, possibly.
Yeah, well, I've just closed the windows of my office, so there's no noise coming through, and it's starting to get hot in here.
Yeah, me too. The fan's off, the windows are closed, and we'll get through today's podcast and headlines, and then we can get some fresh air circulating again. But I hope everyone's keeping well and safe.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we have got a shout out this week. It's something I picked up on LinkedIn. Chorley Group gave their staff the day off on Monday, on so-called Freedom Day, when the COVID restrictions were lifted. And I liked and shared that, and I noticed they were getting a lot of support from across the sectors. So, a good call there, and a worthy shout out for Chorley Group.
Definitely. And a lot of local businesses supported Eid on Tuesday, didn't they, as well? There was a lot of support around Eid on Tuesday as well, with businesses shutting and supporting that. So, no, great with this week. So we have got some good headlines this week, and we've got joined by Steve Whitton again, from the Men Able. So it's another one in the series of the Men Able moments, and he'll be focusing on mental health and well-being as always, and we'll get to that halfway through the show, just after the midway break, won't we, Curtis?
We will indeed. So this week's headlines, and there is a bit of a theme running through the first few headlines. So headlines this week from AM, Car Dealer, Motor Trader, and This Is Money. First story will be Cox Automotive downgrades new car sales forecast for 2021. Although car buyer intention, according to Deloitte, is set to reach record levels over the next 3 months. And following on this theme, we look at some research from Judge Service showing what type of fuel will be at the top of those lists for car buyers looking over the next 3 months. This week, we've also got an update on those showroom restrictions being lifted. What Car have done some research to find out how comfortable consumers feel about going into showrooms that are adhering to the old rules or have dropped the rules altogether. And we've got an acquisition. We haven't had one for a month or so, but we've got an acquisition in Derby with Reed Motor Group acquiring Beechdale Motor. Used car buyers opt for higher deposits to offset rising prices. And we look at car bills and how they're likely to be impacted by changing EU rules. And finally this week, I think all we'll say here is we'll take to the with our, and finally this week we won't be going into space, but pretty close.
Yes, I'm going to say people might be thinking of the other headline of the week, but no, it's not that one. It is the other one. But
if you're into the concept of flying cars, then stick around.
Exactly. So the first story is on Car Dealer, and this is Cox Automotive downgrades the new car sales forecast for 2021, and this is obviously on the back of the supply problems and challenges that the new vehicle market is still facing, be it through semiconductors, the raw materials, EU exit, or the pure transition towards electrification. But I think it is starting to hit, and I think it is clear now that the second half of the year could be as challenging, if not more challenging, as we've experienced through the first half of the year. So we have downgraded our forecast for the 2021 figures, and I think, Curtis, you might point out that that's in the auto focus, the second of the quarterly reports.
Yeah, it is. So the latest forecast suggests there will be 1.823 million new car registrations. So that's a drop of 2.48%, which is just over 46,000 units. And that's against the forecast Cox put out in April. And it's actually more than a fifth, so around 21% less, that rolling average of 2000 to 2019, so that pre-pandemic average.
It is, yeah, and obviously nobody's sort of, there's a lot going on in the new car market. We're coming out at the back of a significant impact to the sector through 2020. We know that there were still lockdowns in the first quarter of this year, but we are trying to, within the Auto Focus report that's available online and through probably my social channels, you'll be able to see that. But that's where we're trying to look and put a bit of context behind what will happen in the new vehicle market for the remainder of the year, used vehicle market for the remainder of the year, plus input from Grant Thornton, NFDA, Auto Trade and Regia around some of the sectors that they operate within, and that's electrification and things like that. So there's a lot going on at the minute, but it is interesting because me and you were catching up quickly before the show, weren't we, Curtis? And there is two little stories that have actually landed just before we started to record today, which add to this really. That, I mean, the headline is and this has come from BMW blog, that all German plants are affected by the chip shortage, and this is from BMW themselves, and the quote is that 10,000 BMW and Mini brands vehicles cannot be manufactured as planned in the next few days. And I think you've got to think about that for a minute. That's 10,000, and that's over the next few days. So what impact will that be over the months and the remainder of the year if this continues?
Yeah. Exactly, and this is across three plants, including the Oxford plant at Cowley.
It is, yeah, and the Magna plant over in Austria, and the VDL plant that they've got as well over in Bourne there. So, I think what is clear is that they are pointing out that they are impacted by the chip shortage. It is going to affect the majority of their plants and the manufacturing of both BMW and Mini. So again, what we were just saying earlier around this, the second half of the year, as you are reliant on new product coming through, that's what's going to be affected. And at the same time, actually, there's a headline in both the Financial Times and the California, of all places, News Times, and this is Hyundai have actually come out now, and we felt that Hyundai actually weren't as impacted by the chip shortage because of their factories over in China there, that actually they're saying that the chip shortage will hit the third quarter of sales. So they're warning their dealer network and their sector that they are impacted, and they expect that it will hit the third and the fourth quarter of their production volumes and sales hitting the sector. So again, we are starting to see a lot more noise around what the remainder of the year will look like for volumes of new cars.
Yeah, and you know what? I was talking to a dealer last week, and he said that, they're now looking at, they had a strong first half to the year, and a lot of that was on the back of a strong order bank from their manufacturer who brought vehicles in ahead of Brexit. Those vehicles have been sold now, and Q3 and Q4, the order bank there is being affected by this lack of supply. So we are starting to feel it significantly now in the UK.
And as somebody has perfectly lined up the headlines today, the next story we're heading over to AM Online, and it's a report that's come out of Deloitte, and the header is that car buyer intention to reach record levels over the next 3 months. And this kind of adds to the challenge, doesn't it, as we were saying before, that actually there is buyers there in the market for new cars. The challenge is getting them, I think, or more than anything else.
Yeah, you're right. So this research from Deloitte shows that around 1 in 10 consumers intend to buy a new car in the next 3 months. So this is according to analysis that Deloitte have put together, and it's part of the consultancy's consumer tracker, and they say it's reached its highest ever level in terms of car buying intention. But as we've just said, this is at a time when many car makers are actually struggling to supply their dealers with new product because of all these shortages. So this is a problem that's hitting us right now. And the piece goes on to say that as a result, and this is something we've touched on the podcast before, consumers looking to buy a new car in the next quarter will have to contend with longer than usual wait times for those new cars. And if they start looking at used cars, they're facing higher prices in the second-hand market.
Yeah, no, and that's I think that's one of the stories we'll go on to shortly as well, around that challenge of that cost of ownership, and that sort of monthly outgoing of the cost of these vehicles as they do rise in the marketplace. But yeah, it's fantastic, fascinating findings there, because the story does go into a few areas around the online sales of vehicles increased to an estimated 2.5 million units, and that's 100% growth over 2019 forecasts, and it said that the Deloitte suggests that the figure is likely to rise still further. So again, a little bit of sort of detail there in the AM story around sort of this survey that they carry out, and there's a bit of insight there coming out of Key Loop as well around the consumers' expectations and the market demands.
Yeah, and the next story, it's a bit of an exclusive for the show from Judge Service. So this is the headline here is Judge Service finds consideration of buying EVs rises the longer car owners plan their next purchase. So it really does tie neatly with the last two stories, because what they've done is they've polled the views of 2,150 car owners to identify their usage and buying trends as the UK comes out of the COVID restrictions. And it's actually asked them what sort of cars would they buy in terms of the fuel. And what's particularly revealing is that those consumers who said they want to buy as soon as they can, they're in the market now, they want to buy as quickly as possible, over 50% will go straight for petrol, and that actually rises to about 57-58% for those buyers planning to purchase in the next 1 or 2 months. But interestingly, after 3 or 4 months, the propensity to buy petrol actually starts to come down as EVs and hybrids actually rises. So one of the questions is, what will you be buying in 12 months time? And we can see petrol coming down, EVs, hybrids going up.
Yeah, no, it is interesting that, because I suppose the obvious outcome for that is the confidence in the research side of things, from doing the research into EV, alternative fuel, hybrid, but actually I suppose there's an expectation that the infrastructure and the support and possibly the prices will improve in time as well, or whether it is that they do want to switch to an electric vehicle or a hybrid vehicle, but they're just not wanting to do it quite yet. I don't know what your views are on that one, Curtis.
Yeah, I agree. I think with EVs, and this is something that we touch on a regular basis on the EV forums that I host for 360 Media. The longer anyone has to think about EV, the more likely they are to adopt EV, and we're seeing that in fleets, we're seeing that in retail as well, and interestingly, and no surprise, the diesel diminishes quite severely, so that those in the market right now for a car, diesel is about 15, 16, 17%, something like that, but that does fall away to just 12% for those considering buying this time next year.
Yeah, so you can see where that confidence is like you say, diminishing as time goes on, and we've got the next story is from What Car, And this actually does connect with what we talked about last week on the reopening of the showrooms on the 19th, not the reopening, sorry, the new lift or Freedom Day, as you mentioned right at the start of the show, on the 19th of July. And this is that the What Car findings are nearly 2/3 of showroom visitors will avoid dealers with no COVID-19 measures in place. Now, I wonder how many of the dealers that we mentioned and called out last week were aware of these findings before they announced their decision to keep the restrictions in place. A little bit facetious comment there. I very much doubt that's the case. But I think these, we mentioned.
They'll feel vindicated by their decision.
Exactly. But I think we shouted out last week with Marshalls, Snows, and many others that did come straight out ahead of the July the 19th to say that they were keeping measures in place. They were going to continue with the PPE equipment, the face mask, and the distancing within the car showrooms, and they felt that was the right thing to do, and there would be. And even Umish from Specialist Cars, he made a comment that they will be approaching customers and asking them to put face masks on, etc. So again, interesting findings here from What Car that actually says from a consumer perspective they will avoid the showrooms that haven't got measures in place.
And that is a high percentage. So that's 64% said they would avoid visiting a showroom if it had no social distancing guidelines, hygiene measures, or other COVID-19 safety practices in place. And more than half, so 60%, told What Car they want to continue to see capacity restrictions enforced in showrooms even after the legal requirement to do so has expired, and 3/4 want social distancing measures such as the 2-metre rule to remain in place after last Monday, 19th of July. So some interesting findings there, and not altogether surprising. I'd say we have learned to live with these restrictions, and if we're going back into retail environments, some people naturally will feel more comfortable and safer. And also, let's face it, we've got to consider staff as well, how they feel about the lifting of the restrictions.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point that you made there, Curtis, that there is stories coming out today, and we'll touch on it a little bit more in the story later on, but about the pinging app being impacting not just our sector but general businesses, where there is businesses now reporting staffing issues. So it is. I think it's in their own interest to protect both the staff and the customers, to ensure that they're not getting pinged and have to go and isolate, and give them with challenges of staffing levels.
Yeah, and hats off to the headline writer who came up with pingdemic. That has been used heavily this week.
It is, and I don't know if I've not been out, admittedly, but I have heard reports that as people are out and about, there is still a lot of people wearing masks generally in the supermarkets, etc. So it's great to see it continuing.
You're listening to All the Chatter That Matters on Motor Trade Radio, brought to you in association with eBay Motors Group. This is your weekly one-stop shop for all the biggest car retailing headlines, and available on demand wherever you are on your podcast feed. This week, Steve Whitton ponders the subject of pre-therapy and suggests a 1 to 10 scale to help recognise when someone needs wellbeing support, and what this means in terms of examining cultures and working practices. So over to Steve Whitton for this week's Men-Able Moment.
Hi guys, yes, it's another Men-Able Moments. I've got a little something for you to have a think about this week, actually. I want you to imagine a scale of 1 to 10. Now, where this came from was that one of our Men-Able members has just embarked on a bit of a counselling programme. In fact, they've actually employed their own counsellors, which is absolutely amazing and an innovative move, I'm sure you'd agree. But what they found was that 21% of their employee population have reached out for help. So what that's immediately raised the question of is, well, what about the remainder, the 79% that haven't come forth and asked for help or want some interaction at all? So what that's made me think of is, let's imagine that we're every single one of us on a scale of 1 to 10. So for our mental health, that is. Now, if the reach out point at which you pick up the phone or ask to speak to somebody or whatever is, let's say, number 8, because things have really got on top of you and, you don't know what to do or how to cope. You've got so much going on, you're just totally overwhelmed with it, that you've decided to, at some point, seek some help and get some advice or whatever. Let's imagine that that's number 8. 9, of course, is absolute severe crisis and, really falling apart and can't cope. And 10, well, we don't really want to talk about number 10 because that's sort of speaks for itself, really. But what I'm concerned about is that kind of 78, 79% of people that are in numbers 1 through to 7. Now, in counselling terms, they are described as pre-therapy. So if you imagine that, most of us in our mental health have something going on at any time whatsoever, and the World Health Organization report that it's probably 1 in 4 that will report a mental health issue at any one time. What that kind of says to me is that there is a significant portion of people around you who are in that sort of 1 to 7 on our therapy scale, if you want to call it that. So they are pre-therapy. Now, clearly, 5, 6 and 7 probably is those people who are getting very, very close to needing some help. And they'll be the ones where mental health first aiders, or menablers as we call ours in organisations, will be looking out for the signs and spotting what's going on. Perhaps they're the ones that, spend every waking hour if they can at work, or the ones that take excessive amounts of time off, or the ones that just clearly can't seem to focus or have some issues or stuff that's going on that makes them, seem disengaged and are getting close to having, maybe a bit of a crisis. So that then narrows it down to even more to those that are, maybe in the sort of 1 through to 5 bit. So what I want you to think about is how many people around you could be, struggling with stuff day to day, and the signals are there. These are the people who would say things like, when you ask them how they're doing, it's the same XYZ, just a different day, or yeah, I'm fine, or yeah, I'm okay, yeah, same old, all of those kind of typical stock phrases that people use to describe how they're actually feeling. These are the people that could be very much in pre-therapy, or even pre-therapy, if there is such a thing. So have a little bit of a think about that, because the second part of that I'd like you to consider is, where does mental health really touch your business? And what I mean by that is that I've started to conclude that in every piece of training that I've ever been involved in or would be involved in the future, there is a mental health angle. So, for example, I know we've touched on prospecting before. Now, it's very easy for any of us in sales to think that actually, the reason that salespeople don't like prospecting is because it involves working into the evening, and, maybe it's a bit soul destroying and people don't like rejection and all of that. Well, when you look at that from a mental health angle, there's a lot of reasons in there why people don't like prospecting, and it's boiling down to their confidence, their feeling of self-worth, their level of feeling, I don't want to be rejected, I don't want to pick up the phone and have that conversation, to be told to clear off or whatever it might be. Take that into the service department. How many of your service advisors are run ragged on a day-to-day basis, are dealing with lots and lots of customer complaints, are getting lots of issues coming up because maybe there's an excessive amount of warranty work going on at the moment? So pretty much everywhere you look, there is a mental health angle to virtually every single role or job or capacity within a dealer environment. So put those two things together. Think about the scale of 1 to 10. And what we're kind of saying is it's probably only the people that are at maybe 7 or 8 that are going to be making themselves known to you, reaching out and saying, I need some help. I want someone to support me. And maybe some of them are leaving that right till it becomes a proper crisis. But what I would do is look around your business and just have a think, actually, how many people have I got that could be hovering in the 4, 5, 6, 7 territory on that scale? The people that are struggling, but using their resilience, using their reserves to properly get through every single day. This is where we now need to start examining culture, working practices, and just what's going on in and around the business. And it starts with communication. So a couple of things to think about. Think about that scale of 1 to 10, and also think about what are the touch points of mental health issues potentially across your business. Catch you next time. See you soon.
As always there, Steve, thank you for that and sort of some food for thought for people listening to that today. So again, thank you for continuing to be involved and to share some of your thoughts and insight around mental health and well-being. So we're heading over on an acquisition now, and this is over to motortrader.com, and this is the Reed Motor Group acquires Beechdale Motor. Now, this is a single site location, but operating under 3 franchises with Hyundai, Alfa Romeo and Jeep franchises.
Yeah, now Beechdale, they were actually named Alfa Romeo's Retailer of the Year as recently as June, and that was based on its CSI scores and delivering the highest volumes of any Alfa site in the UK. So that I would suggest is part of the attraction of Reed buying the business, because obviously the Alfa side is doing a storming trade at the moment. So it's an interesting acquisition. Reed are rated 155 in the Motor Trader Top 200, and they're particularly strong with Hyundai. So this will bring their Hyundai headcount up to 7 sites. They also represent MG and Suzuki, so they will be debuting with Alfa and Jeep. And Reed operate across Lincolnshire, Nottingham, and Norfolk. And as you say, the Beechdale Motor Group was based on a single site in Derby, so a good fit there for Reed Motor Group.
Let's hope they can get enough Hyundais in the third quarter of the year, according to this morning's headline. But yeah, I don't think they're on their own. Again, there must be something in the water this morning with me, Curtis. I keep coming out with these sarcastic.
Yeah, I think so, yes.
I think there is. We'll move on. So, heading back over to AM Online, and again, touching on what we talked about earlier on, and this is a story from iVendy, and used car buyers opt for higher deposits to offset rising prices. Now, obviously, we know that used car prices are rising steadily. I say steadily, some people would contradict with that and say 6.8, 4.8 and potentially another 3% is not steady used car rises. It's it's an acceleration.
Hopefully we'll have Darren Martin on next week to tell us where it's gone this month.
Yeah. Actually, I think it's Jeremy, who's stepping in for Darren next
Jeremy,
week.
right. Okay.
Yeah. I think unless Darren's children's COVID tests come back positive or negative, I think he's planning a week's holiday. But the story is coming from iVendy, and it's our good friend James Chew who is talking about that consumers and are actually trying to maintain their monthly outgoings and trying to offset the increase in prices by increasing their deposit on their finance schemes, just to make sure that the monthly outgoings remains stable and within their sort of cost expectations, but actually trying to offset the increase in prices through the deposit structure of the finance schemes.
Yeah, and it is a significant jump, because the level of deposits across the iVendy platform have actually increased by 58% since January, and the average loan amount paid out over the same period has risen by just 14%. So this is all about front loading the deal, really, isn't it? But pay as much as you can upfront for the deposit and keep those monthly payments as low as possible. So I mean, interesting results here from this iVendi study.
Yeah, and I mean, we touched on it slightly in I think in the judge services they talked about online and things like this, but some interesting findings here from iVendi, and they're saying that the data that they've got suggests that motor finance companies are approving an increasing proportion of online applications, and that the number of applications submitted online has risen by 18.6% since January 2020, but the percentage of those approved and paid out has increased by 55.5% since over that same period. So again, we're seeing this online application rising, but actually the approval scheme has significantly increased over that same period as well.
Yeah, and let's hope all these consumers have got vehicles to purchase.
Well, there is that, yeah. I mean,
so it's my turn now.
Yeah, I mean, it is a perfect storm at the minute.
Yeah.
There is everything going on, and you just hope that whenever we start to see product coming back into the sector, whether that's as some people are muting that it could be the fourth quarter of this year, but many expect it not to start coming until the first quarter or even the second quarter of next year, where the market will be at, and we'll raise it next week with Cap HPI as to how these values can continue to rise. Where is that glass ceiling, and what is the risk of this rise in the future, is all the questions that's been asked at the minute. And that does lead us nicely on in terms of the costs of outgoings into the fascinating next story from This Is Money. And this story looks like it's been picked up from something that came out of the Telegraph earlier on in the week, and they're saying that car repair bills could soar by £100 under new EU rules requiring garages to fit more expensive parts. Now, actually, some people saw £100, but actually the bigger figure is the 2.4 billion that this equates to as a cost of servicing your car through independent garages, due to the fact that under the block exemption rulings that are currently in place, that are being challenged and are still being discussed, I believe, that they will have to use genuine manufacturer supplied parts, and therefore be more expensive than your non-branded parts to service those vehicles.
Yeah, and within this story, no surprise to see that Euro Car Parts have a view on this. So Andy Hamilton, CEO of Euro Car Parts, said that has actually said that the government needs to now step in to overrule the EU legislation. Good luck there. Or else motorists will be forced to pay around £100, as you say, extra per year on vehicle repairs and maintenance. And he goes on, says that he estimates that this could cost British drivers a collective extra £2.4 billion. So this is where the figure is coming from, and leave mechanics and garage operators at the mercy of large car makers when it comes to price and supply of components. So we are heading towards this change in block exemption rules that is accelerating towards us, and there will be an impact here on the independent repair sector.
Yeah, and I think there's going into all areas here, because we were talking obviously about logistics and the cost of items coming into the UK market. There's stories this week around 100,000 jobs in the HGV market, so there could be a price war for HGV drivers coming, which will then add cost onto the goods coming out of those businesses, whether that's food on the shelves or parts in the garage that we could start to see, because we were talking, weren't we, Curtis, that these costs need passing on. And interestingly, the story does go on that gives some great stats going from it, and talking about that the UK has around 30,000 independent garages which currently employ some 350,000 mechanics, and it does refer back to a Whatcar survey that says that 13,000 UK motorist car owners said they were happier with independent garages than with franchised workshops. I'd like to see what our listeners think to that one, listening to the show this morning.
I think things are being thrown at the radio as we speak.
I think they already have with some of my facetious comments coming out this morning. But again, I think what is good from this, and you did highlight this, it's good that the story is being taught around block exemption, because it is one of these things that is happening. It is under consultation. It is to do with the European market. There is a lot to come out of the EU exit still. It has potentially been masked by the COVID pandemic, and I'm not sure we've quite seen the true impact of the EU exit and the transition away from the European market on the UK, be it through the automotive sector, be it through consumer costs, household costs, whether that's your car being servicing or the weekly or monthly food shop. But I think there's still a lot to come in the Curtis.
There is indeed, and once the government sorts out the Northern Ireland protocols, I'm sure they'll be looking at spare parts and how they're sourced for independent garages. Probably not.
Yeah, well, it won't matter. It won't matter because we've got flying cars. So
we have
the final story,
yeah.
And we are talking about cars. We're not talking about interesting looking spaceships going out to space. We are talking about flying cars, and this is a fantastic story that just to end on here, that Curtis has found on the BBC. And there's a video to go and watch as well, and it's saying that a flying car completes test flight between airports. So we have talked about flying cars previously on the show, and whether it is this pipe dream,
drones as well,
drones and taxis and all sorts. Yeah, but it is happening. They are on the way, and this car, or air car as it's interestingly known, is equipped with a BMW engine and runs on regular petrol pump fuel. And it's flown between two airports, hasn't it, Curtis?
It has, yeah. So it's successfully conducted its maiden flight between Nitra and Bratislava in Slovakia, and this is extraordinary. I do urge you to pop over to the BBC News website to have a look at this, because the car itself is straight out of a James Bond film, and the video shows it on the ground, converting into a car, converting into a plane at the touch of a button, and then flying. So it's capable of a 600-mile range, flying at a height of 8,200 feet, and it's so far clocked up 40 hours in the air. And it's not that expensive either, because the company behind Aircar, Klein Vision, says the prototype has taken about 2 years to develop and costs less than €2 million. So that's £1.7 million, which I would say that's money well spent.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, I mean,
that's not bad.
There's some spoiler on that car, though, isn't it?
Yeah. We should add that when it's in car mode, it has this huge spoiler, which would similar to the old Escort Cosworth.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Slightly bigger, but there is a commercial aspect to this, because the company who are building it, they've actually done some research in the US and have found that in a typical year there are around 40,000 orders for aircraft in America, and they're saying, well, if they can convert 5% of those orders to change, a standard aircraft, Learjet or whatever, for a flying car, then potentially they've got a huge market to go after.
That's a staggering figure, isn't it? 40,000 orders for aircraft in the US alone.
Yeah.
That is a significant, taken away from air car, but just for that aircraft market, what a market to get into there, Curtis. I think we've missed an opportunity there.
Maybe there's another podcast for us for that sector.
Yeah, but I think you need to watch the video. It is more fascinating than the other video that you may have been watching this week with an interesting looking aircraft that has gone out to its maiden flight out to space there. But I think what is clear with this is, one, okay, it's quite expensive, but actually not that expensive considering what it is and what it does. What is clear, it's there, it's coming, it's done 40 hours of flight already, and it's a serious project that looks like it could get off the ground, Curtis?
Hey, I see what you did there.
So that is it for this week. Forgive it must be the temperature with our facetious humour this morning. But,
we both need to open windows.
We do. So please do keep safe. It is warm. Please do get outside and enjoy the weather whilst you can. But do obviously please keep safe in this still a COVID environment that we find ourselves in, and everybody that's on half terms and things like that, I hope you get to enjoy some lovely weather.
So that's all for now. You've been listening to the weekly Motor Trader Radio podcast brought to you in association with eBay Motors Group. Thanks for joining us for all the chat that matters. We're back next weekend with our take on the latest car retailing headlines from across the media. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from him.